Okay, this may be a bit tricky, but we'll give it a shot. Okay, let's give this a try. This is going to scuff as it goes in, but that's just the way it's going to have to be. That's the way I want it to fit. So it'll be a pretty tight fit, and then you'll pull it out with this lanyard. I could cut that slot just maybe ever so slightly deeper. I think I'm going to leave it as it is for now. The other thing I want to do is round these corners on the top. I think I'll do that. Oh man. This doesn't look quite straight, so I'm going to straighten this out a little bit. I went ahead and trimmed this back a little bit more to more like the final shape, and to give you an idea what it's looking like. And then I went ahead also, I made a couple more belt loops, so I'll have them ready when it's time. I'm going to go ahead and dye this one. I'm going to dye this one black. This is a solvent-based dye. It's Phoebing's black dye. I can't get it local anymore. I don't know how I'm going to get it. It's I don't know if they're not allowed to sell it here in California anymore. They've got so many rules here in California. The reason I like it is it really covers well and it penetrates really well, so it goes deep into the leather, so if you nick the leather it doesn't scuff through as easily. This is the major coat of dye, but when I do some finish work on the edges and so forth, I'll probably have to re-dye some areas that I cut away, but this will give me a good base coat. I know that you'll probably never see this inside, but I always like to cover the inside just in case you look down in there or it somehow catches the light that it's stained inside as well. Okay, we'll let that dry. One thing I decided to do on these belt loops is add one little decorative item on it, and that was to put a couple of creases in the edges here. So it starts out like this. I'm going to go ahead and open these back up since they're still wet and just put a crease with this tool here and make it long enough so it goes behind the belt loop where it sews on. And I'm not going to put it on the rounded part, I'm only going to put it on the part that is above that, that's exposed. This other part will be sewn on. That's how it looks. Just adds a little decorative touch. One thing I forgot to do was put a little bit of tooling on this leather before I dyed it. Normally I would do it before I dye the leather. So I went ahead and did some, I did a couple of tests just to kind of get an idea what kind of pattern I wanted. I did this first, And I did this. I did another kind of a test, and I ended up with this pattern on it. Now you put the knife in so you can see what it looks like. So it'll look like that. So the next thing I think I will do is probably stain a belt loop and put it on the back. So here's what the belt loops turned out like. And I made several for the other sheaths I'm going to make. And it will end up going on the back, kind of like that. I think I'm going to make it a dark brown color so it contrasts. You won't see it when it's on, but it's just a nice touch. Next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to mark a little line around here where I'm going to put the stitching to kind of give me an even mark here. I think I'll make one with a pencil across here too. So it'll look, if you can see that or not. Anyway, I've got a line there. I'm going to take this star wheel now and go around it to make marks where the holes are going to be so that they're evenly spaced. And pressing down pretty hard to make good indentations. But I don't want this to get away from me and roll off the edge, so I'm trying to be pretty careful. Can you see that? So each one of those little dents will be a hole in the leather where it's going to go through for sewing it. Next thing I'm doing is I'm marking the inside of the belt loop. Turn off this other light so there's not so much glare. Turn off, mark the inside with a line where I'm going to put the stitch marks on the inside. Okay, well, if you can see that. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and dye this belt loop before I go any further here. And as I said, I'm going to use a brown color. Okay, I put a couple coats on there, except for this back side. I just put one coat on there because that's going to get glued to the back. And that's what it looks like. It will lighten up as it dries a little bit, but then when I seal it at the end, it'll darken back up. It'll still look like a contrasting color to the black though. While I'm waiting for the dye to dry on the belt loop, I'm going to start on the next sheaths. Now, I'm going to make two more, and they're going to be different. This one was folded around as one piece. These next two are going to be two pieces, and the top side is going to be thicker. I don't know if it's going to work, but this leather is pretty thick, so I'll go ahead and get one wet and start to get it formed while everything else is drying, and put this other piece aside for the next one. I've got this piece of leather wet, and it's pretty moldable, but it's pretty thick. So we'll see how well this works here. I think I'll just get it stapled down on one side. Okay, it's already kind of molded into shape, and I'm gonna bring this up closer. You can see there's kind of dents and so forth where I've been rubbing it down with the handle of this butter knife. So what you want to do as you're doing this is you want to smooth out back and forth and smooth out those dents, because they will show later on the edge here when you have a finished product. So you want it nice and smooth looking. So I will keep remolding this as it dries and smoothing out those dents so they kind of disappear. And hopefully by the time it finishes, we'll have a nice looking product. I've smoothed this a little bit more. It's still drying, but I wanted you to see what it looks like at this point. So while that's still drying, I'm going to go ahead and work on this one a little bit more. This is still not quite dry on the belt loop, but I'm going to go ahead and mark it so I can glue it on here to stitch it. And I'm going to put it fairly high up the loop here so that when it sits on your waist, it's down pretty low. Otherwise, if this sticks up too high, it can bother you at your waistline. So basically I want it to hang from the belt rather than being like midway on the belt. I want it to be at the top here, or near the top, so about there. So I'll mark it with a pencil, and then I'll have to rough up that surface a little bit and glue it on here. I went ahead and marked whether I'm going to rough it up here with a pencil. You can see it if I hold it to the light correctly. So I'm just using an awl here, and you'll notice that there's two sections here. This upper section is where the main belt loop, so I'll have to sew that on first, then put this lower piece on and sew that on. And all I'm doing here is roughing up the leather so the glue will stick a little better. Okay, I'm going to put some glue on here and glue the upper section on. Okay, I'll just hold this on here for a little bit and let it dry, and then I can stitch this on. If you've seen in my other videos, this is the setup I use to drill the holes in the leather. Some people use an awl, I use a little drill here. So I'm going to go ahead and drill the holes for this belt loop. I'm only going to show, I think, making holes for this, and that's it. The rest of the project you can refer back to this. So basically, I just drill a hole for each spot, and a little dent that I put in there earlier. That's what it looks like. Whoops, I missed a hole.